Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to this explainer on what I like to call the ultimate group project, neuroscience. Think about the human brain for just a second. It is, without a doubt, the single most complex organ in the known universe. So, trying to figure out how it works? Yeah, that's definitely not a job for just one type of scientist. Instead, it requires the ultimate interdisciplinary syllabus, bringing together the absolute brightest minds from completely different fields to teach us exactly how we tick, how we think, and how we behave.
To really put the sheer scale of the scientific undertaking into perspective, let's look at this staggering number, 40,000. That's right, 40,000. That is how many research articles are published annually about the brain. Just think about that for a second. If you're a student or a researcher, you're trying to keep up with tens of thousands of new discoveries, new data points, and new questions every single year. The pace of research today is absolutely breathtaking. And yet, if you ask the experts, well, neuroscientists will be the very first to humbly admit that what we currently know is actually pretty insignificant compared to what remains to be learned. We are truly just scratching the surface of this massive frontier.
So, how do you even begin to teach or comprehend a subject this massive? Well, we're going to break it down. Here is our course syllabus for today's explainer, divided into 5 distinct sections. First, we'll look at the brain's grand complexity. Then, Section 2, a broad scientific umbrella. From there, we'll climb through levels of brain analysis, before exploring emerging interdisciplinary subfields. And finally, we'll wrap things up with global brain mapping projects.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the brain's grand complexity.
It's exactly this staggering, overwhelming complexity that has driven what's widely known in the scientific community as a literal neuroscience revolution. So, let's define our terms clearly right off the bat. Neuroscience is a unified effort among scientists from diverse backgrounds to understand the nervous system as the biological substrate of behavior. Essentially, it's the study of how our physical biology creates literally everything we do. Now, studying the brain is as old as science itself, right? It's got these historical roots stretching deep into ancient philosophy, early medicine, and biology. But the specific term neuroscience and the unified field as we know it today, it's surprisingly young. In fact, the Society for Neuroscience was only founded back in 1970. Scientists basically finally realized that teaching ourselves about an organ this complex required a brand new synthesis of traditional approaches.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 2, a broad scientific umbrella. If you were setting up a brand new university today, how on earth would you teach a subject this massive? One that touches on almost every aspect of human existence. Well, neuroscience isn't just one department. It's this massive umbrella that integrates numerous scientific realms. And this brilliantly illustrates how the field works as a perfect study guide. Biology and physiology, they give us the crucial foundation, teaching us about cell structure, how new cells are born through neurogenesis, and the physical circuitry of the nervous system. But then you absolutely need chemistry and pharmacology to teach us about neurochemistry, the chemical processes happening inside those cells, and psychopharmacology, looking at how drugs affect neural tissue. But wait, how do we even see inside a living brain? Well, that's where physics and engineering come to the rescue, providing advanced tech like sensitive amplifiers and incredible brain imaging tools like fMRI and MEG scanners. And finally, when those scanners spit out mountains of data, math and computer science swoop in to help us analyze all that big data and map out the underlying organizational principles. It is just a spectacular team effort. Let's see how this builds when we look at 2 fields dealing directly with human health and behavior, psychology versus medicine. These are distinct but incredibly complementary roles within our neuroscience umbrella. Psychology combines experimental methods with physiology. It basically teaches us how to relate our behavior and mental processes directly to bodily events. Medicine, on the other hand, takes a much more clinical approach. This involves direct research and intervention by neurologists and psychiatrists who are out there diagnosing and treating nervous system diseases, mood disorders, and behavioral issues. So, simply put, one studies the mechanics of the mind-body connection, while the other medically diagnoses and treats its ailments. Moving right along to Section 3, levels of brain analysis. When you're trying to teach the mechanics of the most sophisticated organ in the universe, you simply cannot look at the whole thing at once. It's just way too much. You have to break it down. To do this, neuroscientists use what's called a reductionist approach. They organize the curriculum hierarchically into these 6 manageable levels of analysis. We start very, very small, right at the bottom. Step 1 is molecular neuroscience, examining the unique microscopic molecules acting as our chemical messengers. Step 2 builds slightly on that with cellular neuroscience, looking at how those molecules work together to give individual neurons their specialized properties and how they wire together. Moving up, step 3 is systems neuroscience. This investigates how constellations of these neurons form complex circuits to perform specific functions, like vision or movement. Then things get noticeably bigger in step 4, behavioral neuroscience, where we analyze how those neural systems work together to produce integrated behaviors, things like sleep, memory, or even addiction. Accelerating even further, step 5 is cognitive neuroscience, studying how brain activity actually creates the mind and higher-level activities like imagination and language. And finally, expanding to the widest possible lens, step 6 is social neuroscience. This is a newer field uncovering the neural mechanisms that both cause and result from our complex, macroscopic interactions with others. So the really crucial point here is this incredible journey from molecules to mind. Just take a second to highlight the awe-inspiring, high-contrast juxtaposition here. At one end of our curriculum, we're looking at microscopic cellular wiring, specialized neurons communicating via tiny chemical messengers. And at the exact other end, those same biological processes are scaling up to create the macroscopic, subjective experience of the human mind. They're creating your imagination, your ability to understand the words I'm saying right now, your very consciousness. It's just a stunning hierarchical curriculum. All right, into section 4, emerging interdisciplinary subfields. The mutual attraction between these different levels of analysis we just talked about and outside seemingly unrelated disciplines has spawned some incredibly fascinating new classes of study. We're seeing the rapid fusion of brain science with entirely different domains. Check this out. We have neuroeconomics, fusing economics and psychology with brain science to see exactly how we make choices and assign value. There's neuroethics, psychoneural immunology, and affective neuroscience, which focuses purely on investigating the biological and neural basis of human emotion and mood. Now, what's really interesting about this is psychoneuroimmunology. Let's zero in on that for a second. This highly specialized field explores the reciprocal interactions between the immune system, the hormone systems, and the nervous system. So why does this matter for you as a learner? Because it validates, biologically, that psychological states directly influence our physical health. It teaches us that the connection between our mood, our daily stress levels, and our physical bodies isn't just in our heads. It's a measurable physiological fact that researchers are mapping out as we speak.
Then we have neuroethics, which focuses on developing best practices for research. As our technologies advance at absolute breakneck speeds, we're facing some profoundly complex implications regarding brain privacy and cognitive enhancement. Think about it. If a machine can eventually read your thoughts, or a microchip can enhance your memory, who gets access to that data? Neuroethics acts as our vital safeguard in the syllabus, ensuring we responsibly and morally navigate these rapidly advancing brain technologies.
Which brings us to our fifth and final section, global brain mapping projects.
If everything we've talked about so far is the coursework, well, these are the ultimate capstone projects of the neuroscience field. This is where big data and massive international collaborations take center stage. We are talking about unprecedented technological feats here. First, the European Human Brain Project aims to develop an actual functional computer simulation of the entire human brain. Over in the US, the Brain Initiative is focused on advancing innovative, next-generation neurotechnologies to image the brain dynamically. And the Human Connectome Project is working to create a comprehensive network map, literally a wiring diagram, of all functional connections within the brain. These are massive global efforts that unite researchers from chemistry to computer science from all over the world to achieve what was once thought absolutely impossible. To summarize our syllabus today, I want you to hear this core belief of the modern neuroscience field. Understanding human behavior in the mind requires the integration of every available scientific perspective. No single discipline can solve the mystery of the brain all by itself. Biology can't do it alone, computer science can't do it alone, psychology can't do it alone. It requires absolutely everyone. Which leaves us with one final awe-inspiring thought. With all of global science teaming up to map the brain, combining every discipline in the ultimate scientific group project, what will we discover about ourselves next? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.